The Biden administration has made climate change a key focus for the next 4 years. Recently outlined its conservation plan called America the Beautiful, or 30 by 30. The goal is to conserve 30% of U.S. lands and fresh water by 2030. Arizona Farm Bureau President Stefanie Smallhouse joins us now with her perspective. Thank you so much for joining us, Stefanie. Now, have you had the chance to review the report, and what are you hearing from your members in Arizona?
Good morning. Yeah, I have reviewed the report, and although it's not very detailed as to how the 30 by 30 vision will be achieved, it speaks very loudly to locally led conservation, which is really important, but we certainly have some concerns with it conceptually.
Certainly. So it sounds like that you're weighing the good and the bad, and you're kind of going through this with a fine-tooth comb. So what can you tell us about the highlights and what might be most concerning to you?
Well, in terms of the highlights, the report recognizes the existing efforts of farmers and ranchers and the role we play in conserving land and water, and the history of how government land designations have at times evicted private landowners from their properties. So we appreciate that recognition. It also generally states the importance of maintaining grazing on public lands and highlights some existing tools for land managers, which are pretty important to farmers and ranchers today. So all of that is great, but we still have some major concerns.
So of those concerns, what do you consider the most pressing for farmers and ranchers, as well as the public in general? I mean, what should they do moving forward in addressing these issues?
Well, from our perspective here in Arizona, there's three major concerns. One, data collection, expansion of federal land ownership in the West, and ignoring current conservation challenges. So to start off with, it's going to require an immense amount of data collection, some of which is very difficult to obtain, like on-the-ground species-specific data for endangered species, and it's possibly going to be quite intrusive into the farm and ranch practices that we use, and we really don't know what, quote, managed for conservation is going to mean in the report. Secondly, it's going to be very difficult for the federal government to have this much control over land and water use without either expanding its ownership by 440 million acres in the next 10 years, or creating new and very restrictive regulations over ag, mining, and energy. And there's a huge backlog in the billions of maintenance issues on federally managed lands already, and we see 60% higher occurrence of huge wildfires on federal land versus non-federal land. Ownership of the federal government is very detrimental to the tax base for rural communities. It severely hampers their ability to invest in schools, infrastructure, and economic development. And, we all know how our rural communities and economies are really struggling already. Perhaps most importantly, and thirdly, the report doesn't recognize at all the current conservation challenges that should be addressed first. The National Environmental Policy Act was meant to keep projects moving on federal lands, but because of egregious litigation, a lot of ranchers can't get conservation projects on the ground. And NRCS has been understaffed for many years. So, in fact, if the federal government were to actually fix these ongoing issues, it's likely the conservation accounting would be in the black without having to increase regulation, take land out of production, or kill rural communities.
Definitely a lot of issues there to be addressed and concerned about. That's Arizona Farm Bureau President Stefanie Smallhouse. Appreciate your time and insight today.